All right, we're back. And from here, let's go ahead and try and start programming out some of our steps. And I will jump in first to our offline because that should be the easiest. We get to do that in ladder diagram, but unfortunately, we really don't have a lot to program in here. The only thing we really need to make sure that's happening offline is that our devices are not running. So let's go ahead, and we've got 4 devices. So I'm going to go ahead and set up 4 networks. And each one of these is going to get its own reset coil. So that's basically the equivalence of unlatching something. And what are these devices? Well, we don't have these devices created yet, and I don't want to create them in here. So let's go back in here to our main program, and here's where we can actually define all of these things. So what have we got? We've got a pump, and that's going to be a bool. We've got a mixer, that's going to be a bool. We've got a heater, that's going to be a bool. And lastly, we've got a valve, also a bool. So now we've got, just like that, we've got our 4 devices created. Let's come back into this offline step, and now we can actually make sure that we're controlling those from the right place. So PLC program dot, and we want to get rid of our heater. Come down here, PLC program dot, and this time it's going to be our mixer. 2 more, PLC program dot, and now we've got a valve, and the last piece we need is our pump, PLC program dot pump. Okay, just like that, we're offline. I told you that was going to be an easy routine. So let's come back into here, and now we can start working on, we could go into initialization, but I really don't know what values I'm going to need to update yet because I actually haven't created those values yet. So for the time being, I think we're going to have to skip over that, and let's go into startup. So startup is supposed to be structured text. Let's go ahead and make sure that we're creating the right kind of program coming in here. And now what needs to happen in startup? Well, this is where we're warming up. So we need to fill our tank and make sure that it's in the appropriate level range. And then we also need to heat our tank up and make sure that the temperature is where we want it as well. And the other thing that we need to do is once the temperature gets up to 300, we can start our mixer, and our mixer has to be running for at least 30 seconds before we can transition out of here and go into operation. So we've got a lot going on in here, but I don't think it's really going to take us a lot of programming. So first thing we need to do, we want to be able to look at our temperature and our level, and I don't believe those exist yet. So let's come back into our PLC program, and let's check. We're going to create a temperature, and that doesn't exist yet, so that's going to be a real. And then we also want to create a level, and that's also going to be a real. Got it? And then I'm not even going to leave these in here, but seeing these lines without semicolons just bothers me, so I need to put some semicolons in there. Okay, so we've got our temperature, we've got our level, and now that we're about to start playing with pumps and valves and things like that, we're going to have the possibility of running into some alarms. So let's go ahead and create our alarm levels. So what have we got first of all? We've got a low limit, and we'll go ahead and make that a real. Whoops, I don't know what I just clicked, but I think I defined that as the wrong thing. So let's pull this down and see if we can find that. Yeah, we definitely don't want that to be a bool. So let's make that a real. And then we can get this annoying little window back out of our way. And actually, I don't even like low limit because I don't know what that is that's low. So we're going to call that low underscore level underscore limit. Alright, so I think that's a little bit more explicit. And then we're going to have a high underscore level underscore limit. And that's going to be a real, and then we have one more of these to create, and that's going to be an HH underscore temp limit. And that'll be it. That's our last real. So maybe I'm forgetting something, but now I think we have enough to go in and start actually working on our startup routine. So let's come in here, and now we're in our structured text environment once again, and let's get this thing going. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to start monitoring our level and see where we're at. And in order to do that, we actually have to have a scaled value. So where are we going to scale our level? Well, the level control and the temp control, that scaling is going to be referenced in lots of different places. So rather than bury that inside one of these routines, that's probably something that we could just as easily do back here in structured text, but also it wouldn't kill us if we wanted to just create that somewhere else and put that in a different external routine. So maybe I'll go ahead and do that, because really it doesn't belong to any of our routines, and there's nothing in the rules that says we can't just put that somewhere else. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in a CFC, and I'll call this scaling. So now that I've got that, I am going to come in here to our main routine, and you see right now I'm not actually calling any of these other routines. So let's go ahead and put a couple of calls on those. I want to call mode control, and I also want to call our scaling. So now those will actually both run. And let's come in here and set this up a little bit. So the first thing we want is one of our lin trafos, and we'll call this temp scaling. And that's good. And then I'm going to create another one and just throw that right over here somewhere. That will be another lin trafo, and this one will be our level scaling. So LVL underscore scaling. Perfect. And now let's actually put these somewhere, where it looks halfway good. I'm not trying to make this thing win any beauty pageants, but I wouldn't like it to look like complete junk either. So what's coming in? Well, I don't have anything coming in yet, and this input signal is not really something that we're going to have to look at in a lot of different places either. So I don't think it really matters if we put that in the main routine. But actually, the more I think about it, yes, we are going to have some simulation logic that's controlling both of these input signals. So I guess we do need to go ahead and create those in the main routine as well. I'm just going to go ahead and finish dropping all of my little boxes in here. I'm not going to worry about errors because we're going to keep our scaling where we want it. But for now, let's jump back in here, and we're going to have a level in, and we're going to have a temperature in. So let's go ahead and put LVL underscore in. That's going to be a real. And then we're also going to have a temp underscore in. See, I did forget something after all, didn't I? Forgot to create these. But that's okay. It's a good thing it's easy to bounce back and forth between all of these, right? So here we're going to have to reference our PLC program dot, and this is going to be our temp in signal. Here, PLC program dot, and that's going to be our LVL, not limit, but LVL in. Okay, so we've got both of the right signals coming in. What about our scaling factors? Well, we know we want 0 to 16383 because these are both PID signals. And we can set both of those up in tandem, not a problem. And what about our actual scales? Well, our temp scaling is going to be from 0 to 1000. And then our level scaling is going to be from 0 to 100. So in temp, we're looking at degrees, and in scaling, we're looking at percentages. And then coming out, this is where we're actually going to set our real values, and those are already defined. So PLC program dot, and that's going to be temperature. And this one is going to be the same PLC program dot, and now we're looking for our level. So just like that, we've got our scaling done. And what comes in is going to just automatically come right back out exactly where it needs to go. Cool. See, I like this kind of programming. That makes it fast and easy. So now I guess we can go ahead and come back into mode control and come back into our startup. Okay, so we need to start looking at our level first. So we're going to say if PLC program dot level is less than 40, well, in that case, any way you look at it, we need to turn the pump on. So then PLC program dot pump is going to be set equal to 1. And at that, we can go ahead and end if, because there's nothing else to do at that point. Now we know that we want our level to be somewhere between 40 and 70. So we don't want this to be constantly cycling between 40 and 70. That's not the goal here. The goal is to get it to somewhere between 40 and 70. So we'll go ahead and say if we're less than 40, then we want to turn the pump on. But let's also make sure that we've got an else in there and we're setting that pump off. So let's go ahead and just copy this whole line, paste it in there, and change the 1 to a 0. And actually, I don't want it to always turn off, and that's exactly what this is going to do. So let's make this an else if, and we're going to say, what if the level is, how about greater than 60? That should be fine. Then we want to go ahead and turn it off. So if we're anything below 40, we're going to turn the pump on, but once we get up to 60, we're going to turn it off. So that's going to put us in the zone that we want to be. And actually, I can even tighten that up a little more. So let's go ahead and say if we're less than 50, turn the pump on. But if we get up to greater than 60, turn it off. So that's definitely going to put us where we want to be. And that's not going to be our operating limits. That's just going to be our pump control. But as long as we're above 40, we're going to go ahead and let everything else work. So now that we've already got that control, we also need to control our temperature. So why don't we just copy that whole thing, come down here and paste it in. And now instead of looking at level, let's look at temperature. So if the temperature is less than, and we can go ahead and say if it's anything less than maybe 350, because we're really looking for 300, but I don't want it to be too close either. And then we'll go ahead and say if our temperature is anything greater than about 375, then we'll go ahead and turn it off. And instead of looking at the pump, we're going to be working with the heater. So copy that and paste that. There. Now we've got two very simple little control loops for our level and our temperature. And that's going to get us in the zone that we want to be. Now let's create one of these for our mixer, and that's going to be really simple. And that's going to be if PLC program dot temperature, And let's make sure we've got the right variable. If that's greater than 300, then, whoops, I'd like to have that on the same line. And we're going to set our mixer on. So that's PLC program dot mixer colon equals 1 semicolon, else, and any other circumstance, then we want to make sure that that's off, because we only want that running if our temperature is greater than 300. So let's go ahead and turn that off, and we can end our if. And there's one more thing that I wanted to think about here, and that is that we actually want all of these devices to actuate on a timer. So we want these to come on a delay, and we want those to go off on a delay. So we actually need some delay logic, because right now we're just hard starting all of these things. We're turning them on immediately, turning them off immediately. So we need to have a 5-second delay, which means we're going to have a little bit more logic. So let's come in here, and pretty much everything that we've got so far, we can just get rid of all of that, because or at least we'll keep it kind of segregated. It's not really doing anything. So let's just keep our useful code and our junk code kind of separated. So let's cut that out of there, paste that in here. That's really just a list of stuff. Same thing for this mode 2 count. We don't need that to be mixed in with anything useful. There we go. So we do have our counter reset. That actually is code that we want to keep. And we also have our calls to our routines, and we definitely want to keep that. But now we also need some soft start logic that's going to turn on our devices. So let's go ahead and we can create a ladder to do that. So I'm going to create one more file, and we'll go ahead and call this device control. That will be a ladder diagram, and we also need to put in a call to that. So that's going to be device control and semicolon. So before we get in there and really start programming that, I'm going to go ahead and break, and we will come back in the next, and I will start setting up that device control logic. So until then, take a break, grab a Coke, see you in the next.